Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You all have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And today is Wednesday, July 3rd, year of our Lord, 2024. Well, it's been a couple of weeks since I've been with you all, and I appreciate your patience. I couldn't let the day before Independence Day slip away in terms of the podcast. Um, if you all been watching Real America's Voice, the Royce White Show has been manned by the great Professor Penn the last 2 weeks while I've been away at the Big Three, and it has not been a good last week at the Big Three. We got crushed, beat by the biggest margin that we've been beat by so far, but that's bound to happen. You're competitive, you win, you lose. This is the way of the world. But we definitely could have put up a better effort than that. So I'm looking to get back on the horse this week in Newark, New Jersey. But the one thing I will say about the Big Three this season so far is that for myself personally and for the audience, the fans, and for the country, it's been much bigger than basketball. Free Donald Trump the first weekend, viral. Free Steve Bannon the second weekend there in Tampa Bay, viral. Donald Trump 2024 last weekend, viral. And there is a part of this game that is about media and content, and we do have to meet our opponents in that way. And my good friend, the great Steve Bannon, who was wrongly convicted and thrown into prison this past Monday, wrongly convicted, thrown into prison, may be one of the best in modern times in using the enemy's playing field to his advantage and to the advantage of the American people. And I want to give a special thank you to War Room, the entire War Room posse, for your bravery, for your support, for your fight. And we will continue to fight. We will get back to work. We will continue to charge and move forward. We won't take a single back step. And we will be there to pick up Steve Bannon on the day he is released from the kangaroo witch hunt sham trial gulag. And that's what it is. And don't talk to me about how low security the prison is or about how bad the conditions were in the gulag. The point is not the conditions with which people are imprisoned. The point is the ideology that informs the injustice of imprisoning people for political purposes, for political agendas. Steve Bannon has been one of the greatest in modern times, one of the greatest orators in American history, one of the greatest in modern times of using the enemy's playing field to the advantage of the American people. And I thank the War Room, and I thank the War Room posse, and I thank Mo Bannon, and I thank Grace Chong, and I thank everybody else there at the War Room, Cameron, and everybody else who makes it go. And obviously, I have a huge, huge amount of respect, admiration, and love for my friend, my mentor, comrade, American hero, Steve Bannon. And Steve Bannon is an American hero. Many could argue that had it not been for Steve Bannon, Donald Trump wouldn't have been elected the first time. And many people could argue that the fight being put up now from the MAGA movement is greatly due to Steve Bannon's intellectual thought leadership. And you don't have to listen to me. That's not me saying it. That's not my bias because he's my friend and because he's my mentor. That's the mainstream media saying it. That's the New York Times saying that Royce White was endorsed because of the precinct strategy that has been pushed by Steve Bannon and others like him, and the strategy is now bearing fruit. And absolutely, the precinct strategy is one of the most important strategies in our nation today. Action. Me and Steve, we do a lot of talking. We talk about the issues, and it's important because before you can go to fight, you have to understand the philosophy. Yeah, you can throw somebody in the deep end of the pool and tell them sink or swim. They have a much better chance of fighting. They have a much better chance of surviving if they understand the meaning and the purpose of what it is they're trying to fight for, why they're fighting. What are the ideas? And there's some ideas we're going to get through today, but the number one thing we have to start with is understanding the direness of the situation. We are in an urgent situation in this country. Anybody who tells you otherwise, Republican, Democrat, or other or in between or outside of, doesn't really matter to me how you identify politically. It matters the ideas. Now, some ideas come baked in with a certain political identity and affiliation, and some ideas don't. Like right now, we're having a huge referendum on both sides of the political aisle about the military industrial complex and the nature of how America handles itself in foreign conflicts. And we're going to talk more about that in a moment. But the number one thing we have to decide right now in this movement is acknowledging the direness of the situation and making a few decisions about what we're willing to sacrifice. And it makes me emotional. It makes me upset. It makes me angry because I know that many people aren't willing to sacrifice what Steve Bannon is willing to sacrifice, what he just sacrificed. I know many people aren't willing to sacrifice what he's willing to sacrifice. Many people aren't willing to be thrown into prison because they don't bend to the political corruption there in Washington, D.C. I know many people wouldn't be willing to go to prison. So I know many people aren't willing to die. But are you willing to give up some of your time? Like Steve always says, ask yourself, what is your purpose? If that answer is to save this country, then this country will be saved. We can sacrifice our time. We can sacrifice our energy. We can sacrifice a little bit of our money. We can sacrifice some of our judgments about the narrative and about one another, mostly black and white. And what I have to say on behalf of Steve Bannon, maybe more so than any other conservative voice in this country, is that he prioritized movement for the black and Hispanic working class. The movement of the black and Hispanic working class is greatly due to Steve Bannon and his constant, constant hammering around those lines or around that narrative. Constant, committed, disciplined. And Donald Trump is going to reap the benefits. And amen to that. Now, Donald Trump has done a fair share of his own work in that regard. And they do their best to try and act like he hasn't. But the facts speak for themselves. The facts speak for themselves. Washed Joe Biden in that debate. He completely washed the floor with him. Completely. Wasn't even close. Not only that Joe Biden is a cadaver and, he's barely even there. It really is. At times, he just trails off into nowhere. he just trails off into mumbling, incoherence. But the content of what was said is even more important. And I tell people all the time, and I'm going to get back to Steve Bannon in a moment, but I tell people all the time, or I've been telling people the last 2 weeks at least since the debate happened, understand why people lose their mind at the end of their life. Sure, some of it is organic, neurological degeneration. Absolutely. That happens. People have organic brain disease. But you can always tell the stout individuals, whether their morals and their principles and their beliefs be those that you agree with or disagree with. You can always tell the stout elderly individuals who have a belief system, who believe in something. And we do have three groups of people right now in this country and three groups of people right now in human civilization. And it really breaks down to people who believe in something on this side, people who believe in something on this side, and people who play in between. Now, you could break that down into faith. You could break that down into science. You could break that down into a whole host of things. But we're talking about people who have a core belief system. Unironically, many of our lifelong politicians, our career politicians, do not have that core belief system. And even on the Democrat side, even on the liberal side, even on the anti-God, secular humanist, scientific, technocratic elite side of things. There are individuals over there who have a real belief system. And those people are coherent and sharp even into their older years. And earlier on this year, Henry Kissinger, you know, died, and he was of that global sort of worldview, but he was sharp right up until the end for the most part. And Noam Chomsky, he's getting older, but he's still pretty sharp. They actually have a belief system, whether I agree with it or not. But my point is, people like Joe Biden, specifically people like Joe Biden, career politicians, puppet politicians, people who have been selected and put in the seat simply because they will follow the marching orders to their own political expedience. These people are going to lose their minds because they have no core belief system. They're sellouts. Too many narratives, too many lies, too many thoughts to keep up with. That's why Donald Trump wiped the floor with Joe Biden. Wasn't just because he's in better fitness, he has better cognitive fitness, or he's in better physical shape. It's not just that. That's part of it. But part of it is that right now Donald Trump has thrown himself into an ideological framework that is rooted in something real, that is rooted in something coherent. So he doesn't need a bunch of notes. He doesn't need a team to come and prepare him for 48 hours in some undisclosed location before a debate. He knows exactly what he wants to say. He knows exactly what he's talking about. He knows exactly what his beliefs are. He knows exactly what he's standing for. He's thrown himself into an ideological position that is rooted in something real. Joe Biden is a puppet. There's so many different interests and lies and lobbies and power players and brokers and puppeteers over there on that side of the aisle. He looks tired. He's tired after a life, after a career, a life there in D.C. in the swamp, after a career there in D.C. in the swamp. He looks absolutely fatigued. He looks sick of it. And part of me feels bad for him. A part of me. Just like our great leader, Steve Bannon, would say, pray for our enemies. That's a Christian value. Pray for our enemies. Part of that prayer is compassion. We're not going to let these people kill us. We're not going to sit back. We're not going to bow. We're not going to turn the other cheek. We're not going to hide anymore. But it is right for us as Christians to pray for our enemies. And that part comes from a compassion and grace and mercy that is reflected in us as a gift from God. Pray for our enemies. A part of me feels bad for Joe Biden. That part of me that feels bad for Joe Biden deeply, deeply understands why it was so important for me to have the journey I had with the NBA and to say no to the money. Despite the shame and the jokes and the insults and the mainstream media trying to make me out to be some deadbeat because I have bad child support or because I have debt, all of those things are a sign of integrity, but you have to have walked through the fire and heard how the economic elites talk about the average person, the average human being behind closed doors to understand just how much of a benefit it really was, how much of a blessing it really was. And we're really selfish with our requests, with our prayer. We ask for things like integrity. We ask for things like righteousness or discernment or vision or the strength. And oftentimes, as they say and they show through parable and scripture, oftentimes God gives you trials and tribulations to prepare you spiritually, mentally, physically, psychologically for trying times. And people call me up and they text me all the time. They go, man, how do you deal with these people spreading these lies? And I say, I don't even think about it, honestly. It doesn't even really phase me other than seeing it and using it as an example to spread the word and the gospel and minister about where we are today as American citizens. I don't even feel it. It's no skin off my back. Look at me. I, I, God blessed me with so much. And I don't mean to toot my own horn or to brag on my own blessings, but then again, I do want to brag. I do want to brag for what God has blessed me with. God has blessed me with so much. First of all, He's blessed me with great health. I've never had any major health issues in my entire life, and there are people right now all across the country suffering from any multitude of health crisis, health emergencies, lifelong chronic health conditions. I've never had a single major health issue in my entire life, and I have to thank God for that. If I was to die tomorrow, I haven't been poked and prodded and scalpeled in my entire life for some, medical reason or some sequence of medical problems. That is a gift from God. I've been blessed. I've been blessed with great height, with great physical stature. I've been blessed with a great voice. I've been blessed with great people skills and social skills and the ability to see things clearly, an intuitive mind, an insightful mind, an inquisitive mind. I've been blessed with so much, and I'm thankful to God. But I also realize where God has prepared me for a time such as this. A time where our friends, our comrades, where patriots, where people who believe in freedom are thrown into prison for no other reason than them being effective, effective in challenging the narrative and effective in challenging the stability of the status quo. That's why Steve Bannon was thrown in prison. He challenges the status quo. He destabilizes the status quo. What is the status quo? That's what I want to talk to you about today. The status quo. Three ideas I want to prepare you with intellectually. As Steve said, next man up, and I feel uniquely positioned and well equipped to shoulder the wheel at this time, especially from an intellectual standpoint. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but there's a reason why Steve um, has often described me as one of the intellectual thought leaders of the movement. And I know that I'm young and I'm only 33 years old, but I would ask you to keep an open mind. Intellectually, three things that I want to walk us through. Number one, democracy. There is a heresy that has taken root in American culture about democracy. One of the four great heresies of the West. The scientific method was first, democracy came next, computer technology after, and artificial intelligence is on the horizon. Those are the four great heresies of the West. Democracy. Democracy has become this sort of foregone conclusion buzzword that you can always throw to justify almost anything. And you can either say you're doing something in the interest of democracy or you're defending something, you're defending against the breaking down of democracy. You're doing something for democracy or you're defending democracy. Those are the two go-to punchlines for the establishment. They're defending democracy or they're promoting democracy, and neither one is true. Neither one of those things is true, and it's becoming more and more clear. Democracy is a dog whistle for globalism. And the proof is that we made the claim that all of these nations would eventually become self-determining. When we agreed to the Atlantic Charter with Winston Churchill after World War II, the promise that we made was after Winston Churchill and the British Empire relinquished the colonial British Empire, that all of the nations we took on as stewards would become self-determining democracies. But but that's not true. No, that's not true at all. What we did was we pushed the American dollar on all these countries and a restructured global financial system that demanded economic fealty, economic loyalty. We demanded that all the countries that took on the United States dollar as the reserve currency opted into that global monetary system. We demanded that they cooperate with our vision of the future. And as a part of that deal, we'll protect you. But any one of you starts to question the way that the money works, we can and we will come and kill you or unseat you. If any one of you from any one of these nations or any one of these nations as a whole tries to defect from the way that the money works, we can and we will come and kill you or unseat you. Is that democratic? Is that democracy? You tell me. I don't think so. I think that's tyranny. I think it's economic tyranny. I think it's economic imperialism. I think it goes against the fundamental of what it means to be American. It goes against what our founding fathers stated in our founding documents. We are a nation of shopkeepers. We are a nation of agrarian farmers. We are a nation of free citizens, citizens that are, are granted certain inalienable rights by a creator, secured by the federal government, not granted to you by the federal government. Fundamental rights, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom to have faith, the right to bear arms. These rights, these constitutional rights, were supposed to be a safeguard against economic imperialism. And yet we allowed war and the fear of war and the fear of death and the desire for peace to relinquish over these fundamental freedoms, these fundamental ideas that underpin what it is to be American. Democracies become nothing more than a dog whistle for globalism. Heresy. Democracy. The word democracy in modern times assumes that all majorities are made equal, that all majorities are righteous. None of that is true. All majorities aren't made equal and all majorities aren't righteous. The danger with democracy is a mob rule. And our founding fathers understood that. And we've lost sight of that every time that MSNBC and CNN and any of these other mainstream media industrial complex outlets talk about democracy. It was a democracy, democracy, democracy. Anytime they talk about democracy, they're just spitting in your face and they're telling you that they don't respect your founding fathers. They don't respect what it means to be an American citizen, what it means to be a free citizen. But that shouldn't shock us. And that's a perfect segue to the next thing I want to discuss with you is this idea that because your founding fathers owned slaves and the nature of slavery as an industry was rooted in this idea that some people were above other people on a racial or, let's say, physical basis, physical being physical skin color. The idea that you should be ashamed of American citizenship is one of the biggest information wars in the history of human civilization. And we don't have to go very far to prove that to be true. Just look at the contradiction. And the contradiction is not few and far between with these people. It's every single issue. I mean, pick an issue and there is blatant contradiction in their logic. Blatant contradiction. For example, here we have a conventional wisdom, an academic consensus, a sort of mainstream political worldview that says we should all be ashamed of our American citizenship because our founding fathers were racist slave owners. And that just blows my mind. It's not that our founding fathers didn't own slaves or that some of them didn't hold racist views. The idea that we should be ashamed of our American citizenship wholesale because of that fact just blows my mind. Why does it blow my mind? Well, in the way that I think, I start to look at other examples of either racism or slavery that would make some type of, I don't know, wholesale calculation about other people or nations. You follow? Where are some other examples of racism and slavery in history that we just conveniently look past for our own political expedience or political agenda? Well, we don't have to look too far. I mean, even now today, we are almost obsessively concerned with providing material support, financial material support to the Ukraine. And I mean, it's not like you have to go back 300 years or 200 years to find the racism or the bigotry or the Nazism in the Ukraine's history. Honestly. I mean, democracy, we're going to make all these nations self-determining, and I guess one of them is the Ukraine, and we as Americans should give up our American identity and our American citizenship and all of these essential ideas like the freedom to assemble or freedom of speech or the right to bear arms. We should just give those up because our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence don't have much validity to them because our founding fathers were racists. However, the Ukrainians that joined the Nazis and killed millions of Jews themselves in Ukraine, we should give our money to, and they were just doing that about 70 years back. You understand how much of a contradiction that really is? I mean, your Kamala Harris's, Nancy Pelosi's, Elizabeth Warren's, Joe Biden's, Barack Obama's, Rachel Maddow's, Joyanne Reid, the list goes on and on, Don Lemon, wherever he is, whatever dildo throne he's sitting on, Don Lemon and the rest of them, they will all sit there and tell you with a straight face that American citizenship is something to be ashamed of, is something to sort of, hold your head about because of the history of white supremacy and racism, the history of 200 some years ago. The Thomas Jefferson history. I mean, they're not nonspecific. They're very specific. They're not kind of beating around the bush and what I'm saying, well, it's kind of always exists. No, they're being specific. They want to go back to Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and George Washington and Patrick Henry and they want to take down your monuments and your statues and say, hey, these people owned slaves. This is a symbolic of racism. Yet we're supposed to give all of our money today to a country that has racism and genocide in its very recent national history. And the Ukraine does have Nazism in its very recent national history. For all of you who don't know that story, because the mainstream media makes sure to never tell you, you can go and find very easily what they call the first Holocaust. Right? Is actually the Ukrainian Holocaust was one where the Nazis, Germany, on their way to Russia, had to cross over Ukraine, obviously, and a lot of Ukrainians just threw on the swastikas. And that's the history there. They threw on the swastikas and they massacred Jews in Ukraine. Now, many who are kind of in between on the whole deal say that, well, the Ukrainians, participated in this genocide of the Jews because they had a very immediate history with Bolshevik communism coming out of Russia, and they regarded Hitler's sentiments about Jews as being merited because they had gone through a famine of their own under communist rule. But does that really matter? I mean, at a point here, we're getting so bogged down in the weeds of what happened in World War II, which is why I say the entire prevailing political worldview is rooted around World War II, and mostly because we're having this strange argument about Nazism or fascism versus communism, and to me, they really seem like one and the same thing. They really are one and the same thing. They end in genocide and mass murder. They end in tyranny and authoritarianism, and we're seeing it now. So we're supposed to send money to the Ukraine, even though they have Nazism and anti-Semitism and genocide in their recent national history. We're supposed to look past that. Okay, fine. I mean, if you want to say any nation can be forgiven, any nation can be redeemed, we don't have to look at a nation's history. Everybody's not the sum total of their sins. Okay, I get it. I'm a Christian. People can be forgiven. Redemption is possible. Redemption is possible. To ask for forgiveness is completely within the scope of Christian faith, of course, absolutely. But why can't we be forgiven here in America? Why can't white people be forgiven then? And I'm not caping up for white people in general. I'm just making the observation that we seem to be very selective on which white people we are willing to forgive. We're willing to forgive the white folks in the Ukraine who massacred Jews by the million. But we're not willing to forgive white people here in America, working class, everyday white people here in America that are so far removed from the slavery that they are held in contempt for. So far removed, you can hardly tell the difference between the white working class citizen and the black working class citizen other than the physical appearance. And what I mean by that is the economic situation, the economic reality. The economic reality is that institutions like the Fed have been at the helm of one of the most significant transfers of wealth in the history of human civilization. Yet the Marxists, the wealth the wealth redistributionists, they stand in alignment with the Federal Reserve and with the government and with the institutions. You see how I say that fascism and communism really aren't that different when you get all the way up to the top, when you get to the apex, when you get to the height, when you get to the climax of the political agenda, it all ends up being the same thing. It's power, money, tyranny, power, money, tyranny, power, money, tyranny. We're going to forgive the white people we want to forgive. We're going to say that all white people are inherently racist, except the Democrats. If you're a Democrat, you're not racist. Doesn't matter if you're white, you're a Democrat. And the Democrats have sort of socialized their political worldview. They've sort of socialized the way that they think by consensus, I guess, on social media echo chambers, and that somehow absolves them for the white from the racism and white supremacy that they cast on everybody else but themselves. Wow. Wow, the idea doesn't even square logically. But why would that shock us? There's so much that's not logical about this entire era that we're living in, this entire chapter of American history. I think the hallmark of it is the lack of logic. We are living in the illogical chapter of American history, completely illogical. I've been sorting through it now. Democracy, dog whistle for globalism. It's really democracy by fiat. We get to say how you live, how you think, how your money works. We get to determine for you. We say it's for self-determination of nations, of people, but really we're going to do the determining. Okay. And we'll do it by force if need be. And we can and we will come kill you if you push too hard. But we're fighting for democracy. Okay. We're going to say which people are racist and which people aren't. We're going to say that our founding fathers, like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, they were so racist that people should be ashamed of the American flag. Yet we're going to fly the Ukrainian flag in our social media bios when the Ukrainians only 70 years ago threw on the swastikas and participated in the genocide of the Jews. But we're going to send them more money. In fact, we're going to send them so much money that President Zelensky's wife buys a Bugatti, a $4.3 million Bugatti. They're in such war-torn conditions. They're in Kyiv, they're in Ukraine, they're in such war-torn conditions that the wife of the president that's trying to save a nation has time to get a beautiful luxury Bugatti shipped to her in the Ukraine. I mean, what a luxury. I mean, Bugattis are so rare, there's only like a handful of them in existence. That's why they're one of the most expensive cars that money can buy. And you're in war-torn Ukraine. You got men and women and children dying by the thousands. Where do you even find the time to think of a Bugatti? These are your limousine liberal elites. But liberal doesn't even really describe them well. They're really just globalists. They're really your technocratic elites. Your technocratic global elites buy a Bugatti. I mean, even if the Bugatti was given to her, even if the Bugatti was free, and to be honest, I mean, they don't really give out free Bugattis. If they do give out free Bugatti, that would be even a bigger tale. If Bugatti as a company is so brainwashed with Ukrainian sentiment in this war that they were willing to give a $4.5 million car, just give it to the president of Ukraine's wife, I mean, that's a slap in the face in and of itself. Okay. The fact that a car even costs $4.5 million in the first place and that people actually have enough money or enough arrogance and narcissism to buy it, I mean, that says something in and of itself too. But the idea that she would get a car even for free, a $4.3 million car, maybe it was $3 million. I forget the exact number. It's somewhere in the $3 to $4 million range. The fact that she would get a $3 to $4 million car in the middle of one of the most ugly wars and border skirmishes in recent history is disgusting. It's disgusting. It should disgust you. It should insult you. It should offend you. Your money. Your money. They're in a dire strait over there. They're in a dire situation, a dire war, and the president's wife has the time, the energy, or let's say even the desire to accept and receive a $3 to $4 million luxury sports car. I mean, I laughed to stop from crying. My friend's thrown in prison on a contempt charge, a misdemeanor. And we're sending our fucking money to a country where their leaders are so pompous and aristocratic that they accept Bugattis in the middle of fucking wars. Maybe the story was a hoax. I don't know. Maybe it was a deep fake. Maybe she didn't even get a Bugatti. But I'll tell you one thing that I know for sure. Every time President Zelensky comes to America and he leaves with a boatload of your fucking money. Let's skip over the Nazi history there in recent Ukraine. I mean, why would that be a surprise, a shock? Ever since World War II ended, we've been almost obsessed with Nazi science and Nazi culture. We've accepted it right into our government and our military and into our technology. Why? Because when you deal in the currency of radical materialism, all that matters is the outcome. The end justifies the means. And if we have to absorb or assimilate or use Nazi science or Nazi scientists or Nazi war tactics or Nazi philosophy to execute our political agendas, that's exactly what we're going to do. But what we're not going to do, what we're not going to do is allow American citizens to have pride in their American identity and in their American heritage, because that's a step too far. You should be ashamed. You white people should be ashamed of yourself for slavery. Every time you see a black person, you should be ashamed of yourself because of segregation. You should be ashamed of American history. You should hate yourself. You should loathe yourself. You should give away your rights and your citizenship to a technocratic global elite because of the history of slavery in this country. Yet you should still send your money to a country that joined the Nazis and killed 1 million Jews in their own country. They didn't kill the Jews in Germany. They didn't recruit the Ukrainians and bring them over across the border and say, hey, have at the Jews right here in Germany. No. They killed the Jews in Ukraine. And that's why when you talk to a Ukrainian Jew, like my dear friend, Professor Penn, and I'm the Times of Israel says I'm anti-Semitic, but my best friend is a Ukrainian Jew. When you ask the Ukrainian Jews how they feel about this war and how they feel about the Ukrainians and how they feel about the Ukrainian government or Ukrainian history, they have a stark difference of opinion than our global elites, than our international dignitaries like Victoria Nuland. They have a very, very stark difference of opinion on the matter. They remember. My good friend Professor Penn still has the stories. He lives with the oral traditions, the oral stories that were told and passed down from family members who were hunted and executed in Ukraine by Ukrainians. But you're going to send them your fucking money. And you better not pay any homage to George Washington or Thomas Jefferson, or else you're a racist. You're a bigot. Third and final thing. Third and final thing. The Fed, the way the money works, it blows my mind. It blows my mind that the Marxists and the communists have somehow found themselves in alignment with the institutions that are responsible for the greatest transfer of wealth in American history. The wealth redistributionists have aligned themselves with the corporate elite and the international monetary system, the bankers. They're all in lockstep. And if you want some evidence, I just read a story the other day that surfaced, and it said that a WikiLeaks piece of information suggested that the Citigroup Bank was in charge of selecting Barack Obama's cabinet in 2008. I mean, talk about follow the money. I mean, that wouldn't shock a person like me because, hey, I'm a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. Everything that I say is rooted in conspiracy. So, it wouldn't shock me at all that bankers would be choosing the cabinets of presidents. Come on. I mean, that's just an everyday stroll in the park for a person like me. But it should shock some of you out there. Doesn't it shock some of you out there that the most progressive president in recent American history, or maybe all of American history, the most progressive president gave the most money to the people who ran the Ponzi scheme that resulted in the financial crisis where you all, the taxpayer, bailed out the banks, bailed out Wall Street. You bailed out the institutions. They were too big to fail. Barack Obama, the most progressive president in American history, was responsible for paying them with your money. And to find out that Citigroup Bank may have been responsible for selecting his cabinet in 2008, are you not offended yet? See, I don't preclude miracles. I'm still of the thought that some of these communists and Marxists, self-described communists and Marxists, might wake up one day and go, "Wait a minute, hold on, what's going on here? Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. These economic elites aren't trying to redistribute the wealth. The wealth is getting distributed exactly how they designed it, and it's going up, still going up to this day. In fact, you're in more debt than ever. And that's why we're going to the Federal Reserve tomorrow for July 4th. And this is the final thing that I kind of want to discuss with everybody is what are you willing to sacrifice? Hey, you can go to picnics, you can eat hot dogs, you can drink beers, you can go out on the lake, on the water, and have a blast. I know a bunch of people that are. All I'm asking you is that if you're in Minnesota at 9:30 in the morning, before you get started, you come down to Father Hennepin Bluff Park, downtown Minneapolis. You come downtown, you march with us to the front door of the Fed, and you at least let the institution know that you're there, that you want to be counted, and that you understand how the scam works. We'll be done before noon. You know, we're not going to hold you all day. We're not going to hold you for 3 days straight because if it was up to me, you're lucky that some of the, let's say, the more, I don't even want to call them. some of the more compassionate individuals in my cohort um, are considerate of what American life has become. The hustle and bustle, the nonstop nature, the need to go to work every day, the need to keep on pushing, keep on trucking, keep on grinding. The more compassionate individuals in my cohort are considerate of that sort of thing. Me, I would just as soon do a 3-day sit-in at the Fed. But we're not asking you to do that. Not yet. Hey, maybe if they convict your president to prison here in the next couple of weeks, maybe if they actually sentence him to prison, maybe then you'll have the motivation to actually do something substantial like sit in at the institutions that govern over you, that govern over the corruption. Maybe then. Not yet. Tomorrow on Independence Day, where we celebrate American heritage and American identity, American citizenship, our founding fathers, the ideas that undergird our way of life, the country, this nation. On that day, just stop by. Just stop by and march with us to the Fed. Just be about a block. You got a block of walking in you? Do you have a block? Do you have an hour or two of your time and a block of walking in you? See, and the reason I bring this up is this is the sort of danger of where we are today. It's not that the left has taken over the institutions. It's not that the liberals have taken over the institutions. It's not that the communists have taken over the institutions. We all see that the danger of where we are now is our acceptance of it. It took me one summer after George Floyd died to assess the situation of local political activism in Minneapolis to realize that something was gravely wrong with the intellectual track of the people in power. Took me one summer, about 2 months, about 60 days of assessing what was going on there in Minneapolis after George Floyd died and marching people to the Federal Reserve. And I realized that the individuals there who talked about political activism wanted nothing to do with challenging the status quo. In fact, all of their marching and protest was nothing more than theater. And that's why it always ended up at the police precinct and not at the Federal Reserve. And that 10 protests, 10 protests we organized, me and my friends. 10 protests, and not one of them stopped at the police precinct downtown Minneapolis. We walked by it every time. And there were a few instances where the police would be outside that precinct. And some of you Minneapolis police officers remember. And you know what I'm talking about. And if you're out there and you have one scintilla of courage left, you'll stand up and profess the truth. You remember us walking by in protest at that time. And the sentiment bubbling up in the protesters was to berate the police, was to start a conflict or confrontation with the police. And on a number of occasions, I had black men who were carrying guns make sure that none of the protesters bothered the police. You think that was on accident? That was me. That was my leadership. Stay away from the police precinct. No need to go and yell at police officers. This is bigger than police. The real institution of power is 2 blocks down. I grew up here in Minneapolis my entire life. I went to high school at De La Salle. Many of days I walked across Father Hennepin Bridge in both directions. One way, you get to Northeast and you got some decent restaurants over there, Chipotle after a hard day at school and having a 6 a.m. practice, A young man needs a Chipotle every now and then. But you go the other way and you got other necessary institutions, public library and things of that nature. I know exactly where I am in Minneapolis at all times. I know exactly how it's laid out, and I know exactly why your local Black Lives Matter organization never in in a thousand years would be brave enough to place any emphasis whatsoever on the Federal Reserve. I know exactly why. And all you police officers, you know why too. And I'm not saying all of you. Many of you know why. Many of you know that the heart of corruption is 2 blocks down from the police precinct. And will you stand with us now? That's what I want to talk about today is we have given over the monopoly of protesting and public demonstration to the left, to the Marxists, to the communists. And it's funny that they use the Constitution, they use constitutional rights to justify their freedom to assemble. And they stretch it all the way to burning the fucking city down. They say, hey, this is America. I'm an American citizen. I have First Amendment rights. And if that stretches over into complete anarchy, then, it's just police brutality. Okay. I mean, that's their rationale. And yet on our side of the football, or on, let's say, even the sane sort of middle of the road side of things, we're afraid to protest. We've allowed them to dominate the entire thing. And I've told you conservatives for 2 years since I first appeared on Jason Whitlock. I told you conservatives nonstop. I told you that the lawfare was coming. I told you that your obsession with the rule of law is misguided and misplaced. I told you that the rule of law is only as righteous as your lawmakers, and your lawmakers have been bought and sold for a long time, so there is no rule of law, and it's just a matter of time before the kangaroo courts turn on you. And now you're starting to get it. And now you're starting to feel it. Now you're starting to see. And I don't say that in a sort of arrogant, I told you so sort of way. I say that out of genuine concern, urgency, fear. Fear when your friend, when your mentor has to surrender himself to a prison, a federal prison for a misdemeanor. Genuine fear you all should have next. Don't think you're hidden. Don't think because you won't step out there and speak the truth the way Steve Bannon did that you're hidden, because you're not. And if there's something you should be ashamed of, if there's something you should find shamed in, is that you haven't done anything significant enough yet for them to throw you in prison too. And that's where these Marxists and communists are beating you, because they're willing to go to prison. They're willing to die. They have that sort of lack of love of life. They have that nihilism working for them. They have that despair. That's what's been weaponized. Yeah, understand. The despair of the common American citizen has been weaponized against those who have faith and righteousness at the center of our life. And that is the real metaphorical nature of when we say there is demonic possession. It's a spiritual warfare. That is the technical function, the technical reality of how despair has become a sort of demonic possession that's weaponized against you. And I get it. All of you love life. You love life. You love your family. You have responsibilities. What about the responsibility to your country and your countrymen? What about the responsibility to this nation? And that's why when Steve says you have to ask yourself, what is my task? What is my responsibility? If it is to save this country, if my task and my responsibility are to save this country, then this country will be saved. If not, it won't. And that's the other half of that idea, of that sentiment. If that isn't your focus, if that isn't your task and your responsibility, the country will not be saved. There is nobody coming to save you. It's not Donald Trump. It's not Steve Bannon. It's not Royce White. It's you. It's each and every one of you. And if you can't get up on a national holiday, the national holiday that emphasizes American heritage, freedom, and independence, if you can't get up on that holiday for 2 hours and exercise your right to assemble, if you're too afraid of your government, of Antifa, if you're too afraid to go to the front line and the front door corruption, you should not be complaining. I don't want to see you on social media talking about the communists. I don't want to see you in your group chats or your message boards talking about the communists or talking about the Jews or talking about black on black crime or talking about, feckless rhinos and neocons. I don't want to see you talking at all. You give up your right to talk about shit when you're not willing to do shit. See, there's a whole industry here. There's an entire industry that is based on talking. Even this, I'm doing it right now in the podcast. The difference is some people talk to bring action. Some people talk to talk. You can go to Fox News, all of them. Go to Fox News. When was the last time Fox News gave you a directive? When was the last time Fox News actually gave you an action plan? When was the last time Fox News actually said, show up here? Show up here at this time on this date because we're sick of this shit and we need to protest it. Tell me when the last time they did that. Tell me. In the comments right now, when was the last time Fox News, we lead people to think things, with innuendo. What the fuck is the innuendo? For Fox News is a bad example. We all know what side of the football Fox News is on. But I'm just telling you like it is. A lot of people still watch Fox News. It is what it is. We know, you can say you don't, but we know you do. And I know some of you do. I know you personally. I don't watch it. I don't watch it. I don't watch any of the news, to be honest, unless there's a clip where somebody says something completely outrageous, like the woman there, the elected official there in New York City that said black people don't know what computers are. Young black children don't know what computers are. Then I have to tune in and say, what the hell was being said? What was said? But other than that, I don't watch it on a regular basis because I know what they're going to say. I know what they would say. I know what they think. And ultimately, I know what their goal is. Their goal is for you to do more watching than you do doing. That's the goal. The goal is to have you do more watching than doing, more watching than action. Who you need to be watching is Steve Bannon. You need to be watching The War Room. You need to be watching Alex Jones. To watch people who talk to you in a way that challenges the status quo at the highest level and then get to the action. And what we're offering at the start of this campaign, the first official event of this campaign, held by this campaign, is at the doorstep of one of the most corrupt institutions in this country, in the world. The Federal Reserve is one of the most corrupt institutions in this country, anywhere around the world. And that's where we're kicking this campaign off. It's the same place we kicked it off in 2022. I remember when I announced I was running for Congress, and I made the announcement at the Federal Reserve. Go back and check the article, check the Star Tribune. The article's right there. It was the Fed then, it's the Fed now. Nothing's changed because it's not theater. The Fed was fucking you then, the Fed's fucking you now. We have not changed anything yet. And until we change things, we don't need politicians that kind of, lily pad from symbolic theater to symbolic theater. We're going to go from this place to that place because it looks better. Because our art and design majors, our comms majors, they think of how things look to the public. It's all about perception. What's the perception of being $36 trillion in debt? Perception matters, huh? Does it? What's the perception of that? I guess perception doesn't matter because it's hard for me to understand how there's any other perception from average American citizens than your government's fucking stealing from you. That is the perception, the only conceivable perception, and the reality. It's one of these rare occasions in modern American or modern human civilization where the perception and the reality merge plot. Your government is stealing from you. The reality and the perception merge plot. And that's why we're going to the Fed in the morning. 9:30 a.m., Father Hennepin Bluff Park, the great Father Hennepin Bluff Park, Federal Reserve, 9:30 in the morning. We'll be marching on down to the Fed, and we got a good number of things lined up. Good number of things. We're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to, have the national anthem. We're going to play some key speeches about economic and financial tyranny from some of your iconic American figures in history. We're going to have a reading of the Declaration of Independence because it is July 4th. It is Independence Day. And we need to reestablish our independence. Pride gets an entire month. To celebrate being America, you only get one day. One day to celebrate being America, being an American. How un-American is that? We should be celebrating every day. But hey, fine. We don't do the holiday thing every day. I get it. I get it. One day. One day can we share in the community of being American citizens and our gratitude for what this nation is? Not only that, but our desire to change what's wrong with it. Because this nation isn't perfect, and our founding fathers never claimed that it was or that it would be. What they did was empower us to assemble freely to change things when they get out of whack, when they've gone too far. And for some reason, there are Republicans here in Minnesota who think that the threat of violence, the threat of incident, the threat of things going wrong at public demonstrations should deter us from public demonstration. And what you have to ask yourself is, how can these people claim to be patriots? Honestly. I mean, they have such a sort of milquetoast, lukewarm, childish, and immature formulation framework of what it means to be an American and what citizenship means. They have such an immature framework. How can they even, comfortably claim to be patriots? There is nothing patriotic about being too afraid to assemble in times of absolute tyranny. There's nothing patriotic about that. In fact, the only word to describe it is cowardice. And there are a lot of soft belly cowards in the Minnesota Republican Party, and we are going to weed you out. We are going to let you expose yourself, and from there, we are going to weed you out. Because right now, there's a person in Minneapolis. Right now, there's a young black man in Minneapolis. There's a young Hispanic man in Minneapolis. There's a young independent voter in Minneapolis. There's a young person who's never voted at all down there in Minneapolis. There's a young person somewhere across the state of Minnesota who's never been involved in party politics, who once given the truth, once educated, once empowered, will gladly take your fucking place in the phalanx. The chair of the Minnesota Gun Caucus had the balls to state publicly that Steve Bannon is not an American hero. Michael Broadcorp, Steve Bannon is not an American hero. These are your leaders. These are your voices. These are your everyday run-of-the-mill, mainstream Minnesota Republican leaders. The Minnesota Gun Caucus? The Minnesota Gun Caucus upholds the facts and findings, the outcome, the results of kangaroo witch hunt show trials? Openly mocks Donald Trump, chair of the Minnesota Gun Caucus. Openly mocks Donald Trump and says, shouldn't have left the documents in the shitter. Really? Cardigan wearing mealy-mouthed, soft-belly, feckless, spineless Republicans. And we're going to weed you all out. And we're going to start tomorrow. Who won't show up? Who's afraid? Who's afraid to show up on the front line? And I told Steve when we first met, when we first started talking, I said to him, we'll try it your way. We will try it your way. But I'm here. I'm here if your way doesn't work. We're in the process of doing it Steve's way, and we are winning. But they have upped the ante. They upped the ante when they convicted Donald Trump. They upped the ante when they threw Steve Bannon in jail. They upped the ante when they threw Peter Navarro in jail. They upped the ante when they, shut down an InfoWars, for example. They are upping the ante. So we have to prepare ourselves to up the ante as well. And peaceful protest is lowest on the rung. It really is. It really is. But it's not inconsequential. See, because what you have to realize is the other part of the human psychology that the Marxists and the communists and the globalists have begun to work on is this sort of need for human beings to be socially accepted. And as the internet expands and as social media expands and as our means of communication become more and more global, the desire to be accepted, the desire to be acknowledged, let alone accepted, but the desire to be accepted is going to rise rapidly. And in a world where attention and acceptance is the highest form of currency, you better damn well represent yourself and your views. You better damn well be somewhere where people have the opportunity to see you and can walk into the knowledge that they need to be American citizens and to fight for citizenship. Pride gets a whole month. Another black man will get shot and killed. Trust and believe. We're in an election year. Another black man will get shot and killed. It will be gruesome. It will be on video. It will be filmed. It will be used to try and farm Democrat votes in this election. I guarantee it. Sad to say, tragic, but true. If I had to bet money, I almost can guarantee there will be another George Floyd type situation before this election that is used to galvanize black votes for Democrats in the final hour. But where will we have been? Right now is the time. I see the time just slipping away. It's just slipping away. And we have the winning hand. All the momentum is on our side. What are you waiting for? What are you afraid of? What more needs to happen? Are you scared? If you're scared, they say go to church. If you're afraid, stay home. Fine, I get it. But don't fucking complain then. You have no right to complain if you're not willing to do something. Willing to do something this time isn't just voting. It isn't just donate money. That's fine. And we appreciate it. We appreciate your donations and we appreciate your vote. But that's not it. We are in a war. And you as a citizen have a duty. You have been enlisted in this war, whether you like it or not. You may not be interested in the future of this country. You may not be interested in its politics, but I guarantee you politics is deeply interested in you. Deeply interested in you. You have been enlisted in this fight, whether you like it or not. Now you get to choose which side of the fight you're on and what you're willing to sacrifice. And that's the bottom line. What are you afraid of? What more needs to happen? Now you have to be a force multiplier. You have to go out there and bear witness. You have to go out there and represent a belief system, a worldview, sacred honor, compassion, love, friendship, to allow people who see the same corruption you do, but may not be strong enough yet to walk out, to walk away, to change course. You are going to be the courage that gives them permission to do just that. And that's why it's important that we go down to the Federal Reserve. Don't ever let the CNNs or the MSNBCs fool you into thinking everybody in Minneapolis thinks the same way that they do. Don't ever let them fool you into thinking there's not a truth out there that can be ministered and conveyed to people that can change their hearts and minds. As soon as you start to believe that the mainstream media has more power than the truth, you have now crossed into the realm of heresy. Jesus Christ, God, the gospel, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, these ideas we hold to be self-evident, these ideas have staying power. And if you're too soft-bellied and weak and cowardly to stand on those ideas in the belly of the beast, stay home. But you better not fucking complain. You better not complain if you're going to stay home. And you damn sure better not try and indict me. You damn sure better not try to to uh to criticize me. One, because it falls on deaf ears. And let me tell you this story. This guy named Sean Holster. First of all, Sean Holster was supposed to have been the one to set up a debate between me and my primary opponent, Joe Frazier, before the convention, which fell through because they wanted a specific date. I said, we can do it any of these days. I'm just not going to be in town on that day. We can do any of these other days, though, and they didn't want to do it. They needed that specific date. Okay. Scared, cowardly. Neocon Joe Frazier, we're done with forever wars. He says it's just a bumper sticker. Come down to the Fed, Mr. Wells Fargo. Mr. He, him, Wells Fargo. Joe Frazier with the he, him pronouns on his LinkedIn bio, 26 years military intelligence, pro-Ukraine war. You come on down to the Fed. Let's see how you feel about central banking. Oh, wait, you work for Wells Fargo. I could venture to guess what you think about central banking. I digress. Sean Holster, chair of the Minneapolis Republicans. Chair, Minneapolis Republicans. Curses one of my female staffers for calling and trying to coordinate with the Minneapolis Republican Party to participate in this rally at the Federal Reserve. Curses one of my female staffers. Female staffer calls me. She goes, hey, I just got off the phone with Sean Holster and he's just cursing me out. I said, he's cursing you out? Like, what do you mean cursing you out? For what? No, I asked them if they would, send out an email to their Minneapolis Republicans and tell them that we plan to do a rally at the Federal Reserve to highlight the importance of our founding ideas and talk about economic tyranny and things like that. And he cursed me out. Said that you were a BLM protester, that you're a member of BLM and you're just trying to stoke violence in the city. I said, but he cursed at you, huh? What do you mean? What do you mean cursed at you? How? He cursed at me. He just kept cursing at me. He said, oh, okay, send me his number. I want to talk to him. Send me his number. Send me his number. I called the gentleman. I called Sean. I said, Sean, Royce White here. He goes, hey, how you doing? I go, not good. Not doing good right now. I hear that you cursed at one of my female staffers for trying to coordinate with the Minneapolis Republicans for in this rally at the Fed. I sure as hell did, and I'll curse at you too. Oh, will you? Who the fuck do you think you are? Sean Holt, who the fuck do you think you are, you little pencil neck twerp? If you're too fucking scared to take your country back, you stay the fuck home and I'll do it for you. You spineless, feckless little fucking twerp. And if you don't like my language out there, if any of you Republicans out there are so posh and polite and mealy mouthed, you're so obsessed with the conviction of your convivialness, this thin veil of civility. If you really can't handle the profanity, I don't expect you to show up at the Fed, but I also don't expect you to think that I'm going to listen to your fucking complaining. You're whining and complaining. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. Every corner I look around, every rock we turn over, there's a rhino or a neocon that's acting like they're patriotic, that's acting like they're Christian. But the heart of their patriotism is I have a patriotic flag. I'm in a few conservative message boards. I vote Republican and I go to church, and my church is a 501c3 Christian institution where the pastor doesn't talk about political issues because if did, then they lose their tax exempt status. So we don't curse in my house, and that's the hallmark of my Christianity. I'm so sick and tired of you people. I am so sick and tired of you people. It becomes very obvious when I run into the people like Sean Holster, a fellow Catholic, by the way, conservatarian, beatnik, creative conservatarian on his social media. I mean, what does that even mean? I don't know. But I'm so sick of these people. It becomes so obvious to me, as it should to many of you, the reason why we lost this country. If you're afraid of Antifa, If you're a conservative out there, if you're an American patriot, if you're a MAGA, an ultra MAGA, smash mouth nationalist populist, and you're afraid of Antifa, it's no wonder why we lost the country. If you're afraid of Black Lives Matter, it's no wonder why we lost the country. If you're afraid of Muslims, oh my goodness, the Muslims are coming. There's no wonder why we lost our country. It's no wonder why people like me, who came from outside the fold of politics, people like me who were apolitical, people like me who were just fine taking stands against the billion-dollar NBA all on my own, didn't need no help. Didn't need any help from the other players. Didn't need any help from the coaches. Didn't need help from the activist community. I didn't need any help from anybody. I'm taking a stand on my own. That's why me and Steve Bannon really get each other. We understand that we see it in one another. Real recognizes real. That's why when he asked me the other day when I was on War Room why I was in Connecticut, my simple answer was I love you, because I do love him, and I love him because I respect him because he's fucking fearless. And a lot of you out there are fucking spineless. And I don't say that, I don't say that to be disrespectful. I say it hopefully to motivate you. It's the same way I would with my young players that I coach. Victory or death. We don't mean actual death, death of a nation. And that may actually mean your death as well. In fact, it's more likely than not that it will mean your death as well. But a lot of people don't understand that until it happens to them. A lot of people don't think that to be a reality until it happens. Just go back and read the stories about Nazi Germany. Go read the stories about the genocide of the Jews in Ukraine. Go read the stories about the gulags there in Russia. Go read about Mao China. And how authoritarianism crept up and then jumped on their back. And I say this all the time, and people, I don't know, people must think I'm crazy or some shit. You think it's just going to stop with MAGA. That's what many of these other Americans who are kind of on the sidelines watching, spectating, they think it in their mind when, when AOC and Pelosi and all these other mainstream Democrats say that they have to re-educate MAGA Republicans, that they need to reprogram MAGA Republicans. And they have said that publicly now, which is very democratic of them, right? That we need to be reprogrammed. I mean, when they say we need to be reprogrammed, I kind of get the sense that other people are watching and thinking to themselves, well, if the worst that happened is that some MAGA Republicans get thrown in a concentration camp or re-education camp and got forcibly reprogrammed, if that's the worst that happened, wouldn't really affect me so much. Sorry to tell you, that's not how it works. That's never how it works. They never stop with the group of people who they say are the problem. It always expands because what they start to realize is that it's not just one group of people that are the problem. It's the mass populace of people that are the problem, that are hard to control. And your global elites actually tell you, if you listen close enough, you know where to go. They actually tell you that the goal, the agenda should be to get the population back down to a manageable size, okay? They actually come out and say it, that the world's resources would be much more manageable if population was down to what it was about 1,000 years ago. It'd be much easier to manage. So they're actually telling you. So when they say they want to reprogram MAGA Republicans, they're not just talking about Royce White. They're talking about you. You'll be in the group. There'll be a group. Remember Nazi Germany. Remember, it wasn't just the Jews. That's the story we tell to uphold the globalist narrative and use the Jewish identity as a linchpin of New World Order. Same way we use the black identity. But it wasn't just the Jews that they went after in Germany. Remember, they went after the Jews, then they went after the Gypsies, then they went after the Romani, and then they went after the Catholics. There's 4 groups already. Who knows who else they swept in just on spontaneously, when you're the Gestapo and now you got a license to kill from the state, from a fascist tyrannical state, who knows who else they just decided to rope in. And there was some of that as well. And there were Germans, just Germans, not Jews, not Romani, not gypsies, not Catholics, just German citizens who were sympathetic or what the state viewed as sympathetic to dangerous groups, and you're getting carted off too. Okay? That's the danger of what's coming. And you could think it's a game if you want to, but I guarantee you it's not. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And this was episode 202. 9:30 a.m., Father Hennepin Park, downtown Minneapolis. Come stand with us. Come join in a community of American citizenship with us. Come march to the Federal Reserve with us. Be counted. Make your voice heard. Let the establishment know that you understand the heart of the corruption, and this is only the beginning. I don't care how many people show up tomorrow. I would just as glad go by myself to the front door of the Fed. And everybody on the Democrat and liberal side will see that as a failure because they need that sort of groupthink. They need that sort of sense of consensus, of mass consensus, to feel like they've accomplished something. Not me. I would just as glad go by myself, but I do it. And I'm doing this publicly as the first official event of the campaign because I think what the Federal Reserve is and has done is deeply, deeply relevant to your everyday life, to your way of life, to your quality of life, to your standard of life, to your economic future, not only yours, but your children and your grandchildren. So if you agree, if you're of like mind, join us in the morning. July 4th is a day of celebration, but first, before we celebrate, we must honor our duty in this time of crisis. Fight continues. Godspeed.